Hello there, and thanks so much for joining me for another tutorial. I'm Erin Eno, and today we're going to be painting these really simple watercolor florals. These are probably the simplest flowers you will ever paint. If you do like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and also please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Now grab your paints and let's get started. Okay, so today I am using my Fabriano Artistico watercolor block. It's 100% cotton, 140 pound. My block size is 7 by 10. I've masked off half the area with just a piece of washi tape. You can just do your paintings on two separate pieces of paper if you want, but one we will be doing a full background wash on, so that one will need to be taped down to a board so it doesn't warp and buckle on you. I also have my Royal Talons Van Gogh paints in my palette, jar of water and a paper towel, and I have my 3 Princeton Neptune brushes on hand, one in a size 12, 8, and 4. So I have pre-mixed this kind of dusty rose kind of color. I mixed it up the other day and thought it was really pretty, so I'm going to do another painting with that. Okay, so I'm going to start by just wetting this whole right side. This washi tape is from the dollar store, and I find that it doesn't really stick all that well, so I'm hoping it will cooperate and at least stick long enough for me to finish this painting. So I'm going to start with this one that has the full wash background first, and then while that's drying, we'll go on and do a painting on the left side. Okay, so I'm just wetting the whole thing. I'm just using my large brush, but you can use like a wash brush if you have one. And we're using very minimal colors today. I've mixed up this color, and it consists of permanent blue violet and permanent red light with just a touch of Payne's gray in there. Okay, so I'm just going to tip my board or my block to make sure I've got it wet everywhere. I see a couple of dry spots. And I'm just going to go in and start tapping in some of this color. Just a light wash of it. And I'm just going to let this kind of bleed out and soften up. And I want it a little heavier towards the bottom. This is going to dry lighter. And so I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's gray and also just kind of brush some of that in. Still really lightly, but I just want a little heavier down towards the bottom here. Put in some of that pink again. A little more of the Payne's gray. Just a titch up here and a little heavier at the bottom, like I said. Okay, so I'm not putting a lot of tone in the background. I want it to stay nice and soft. Okay, and that should do it. I'm just going to let that all bleed out. Now this is kind of throwing my eye off about where the center of this side is, so I'm going to remove the washi tape. I think it'll be okay because it's not going to bleed beyond where it's wet, so it should stay put and just start to bleed out just where it's wet. I just have to make sure I don't put my hand in it. Okay, and that's all we're going to be using this large size brush for, so I can put that aside. And we'll take the tape off. Ta-da! Now for the flowers on the left side, I'm going to use really subtle colors as well. I'm going to use Payne's gray to start, just straight Payne's gray, but just a really light, well, not really light, but a light wash of it, medium wash of it. Okay, so I'm just going to just get some of the pigment off my brush by dragging it along the lip of my jar. Okay, so I've got most of it off my brush. My brush is wet. I'm going to go back into that, and we're just going to tap, but I do need to protect this other side, so I'm just going to put a little protection there, and you're just going to splatter. Nothing drastic, just random splatters. Now this is just the straight Payne's gray. I'm going to rinse my brush off my water, and I'm not drying it on my paper towel. I'm just dragging it, just dragging it along the edge of my jar just so it's still wet. And you're just going to go into that Payne's gray and just with your wet brush hit those splatters and just create really rough, simple flowers. Now I'm using 100% cotton paper. If you're not using 100% cotton paper, your water is going to sit on top a little longer, but because I'm using cotton paper, I have to move pretty quickly or those droplets will just start sinking into the paper and I won't be able to make these petals properly. And if you find your petals are getting too pigmented, just rinse your brush off in your water every so often. This is kind of hard because I'm trying to avoid putting my hand over here, which I just did, but that's okay. And we're just going to do a few flowers in this Payne's gray, and then we're going to do another round of flowers that will be a little bluish in color. Okay, now you don't have to do every splatter because we're going to be putting in those blue flowers. So for the blue flowers, I'm going to be using Viridian. This might be out of camera range for you, which is right here. Okay, it's like a turquoisey green. But when I add a little bit of the Payne's gray to that, it tends to go a little on the blue side, which is what I'm after. Just like that. And again, actually, you know what? I'm going to make it just a little bit stronger. Just a little bit more of the Payne's gray in there. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to take and splatter again, still protecting this side. And I'm not paying too much attention to how the splatters go, but I am putting them in areas where I think I want flowers. You can do as many as you want. You can do more than these two colors. I just want to keep it really simple. Okay, just like that. Very simple. You don't have to leave space in the center for the center of the flowers. We're going to be doing something there in just a little bit. I don't want to go into that other half. If you're using two separate pieces of paper, it's probably a little easier. You don't have to worry about getting your hand mucked into the other side until it dries. Okay, but you can see these are really simple 4-petal flower shapes. Maybe another one up here. And if it starts to get awkward, you can, you know, turn your paper, which I will be doing, I think. I'm just going to do another one right over here. I'm running out of pigment, so these are going to be really light. I'll just kind of cheat and go back in and get a little more of that pigment. Okay, so you can fill your whole page if you want, or just put in a few. This one's kind of bugging me. I'm just going to fix that one a bit. But don't fuss too much. Just let them do what they're going to do. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm just going to dry it all with my heat tool. Okay, so now that this side's dry, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Only with this one, I kind of thought it might make a neat little card. So I'm just going to try to leave some space up here and over here, just in case I want to cut this and make it into a card. I want to leave room for some writing. So I'm going in with my brush, not too wet, but I'm going to take this wash. And I'm just going to be a little more careful about where I put these splatters because I don't want them everywhere, like I say. So I'm just going to put my paper towel there, just put my hand here and just tap away again. Okay. Then we're going to take the larger brush and do the same thing. Just drag this pigment out. Sorry, the lighting's really bad today. It's really gray and rainy, so the lighting in here is not good. Okay, and again, if you're using a cotton paper, you've got to work fairly quickly to do this. Now the sun comes out. And if you find your splatters aren't giving you enough pigment, like in my case, I feel like I could use a little bit more. You can always go and add some in, which I think I will do. There we go. We need our petals to show up. Let's just do one out here and turn your board if you have to. I kind of cheated there. I had to put some pigment down because it was getting a little light. There's really no cheating, I guess. So if you do find it a little light, you can just always go in and just tap in a little more pigment, just like that. And I think I'll do one more up here, if I can just get enough out of the paint that's on here. I really don't want to have to overthink this. I just want the splatters to kind of determine where the flowers are going to go. So I think that's good. This guy went a little rogue on me, so I'm just going to touch that up just a bit. Okay, so there we have our flowers. Now we're going to go back to this side over here and do our second step for our flowers. And that is going to be going into straight Payne's gray. Okay, so it's highly pigmented and looks quite dark, okay? And then you're just going to tap in the center of a couple of flowers. Now, if you're using non-cotton paper, this is going to stay wet longer. But because mine is cotton paper, I don't want these dots to sit too long. So I'm just going to do a few at a time. But I'm going to rinse off my brush. And then what you're going to do is just take the tip of your brush. Okay, I just took a little bit of water off the edge of my jar, just like this, and a few scrapes, okay? Then you're just going to touch the tip of that Payne's gray and just drag it out with your brush. And if it's too heavy, just pick some up. I just like to roll my brush. You've seen me do this in other videos. I just find it just drags the color out. It doesn't make it bleed all through the petal, because when you're rolling it, it kind of won't extend beyond your brush. I hope that makes sense. Just put it down, kiss that gray, and then roll your brush. See, that just prevents you from actually dragging it out like you would be tempted to do. Okay, so I'm going to kiss that edge and just roll it down, just like that. And all that does is just create some really nice depth and separation in your petals, but it keeps it still very loose. Okay, and turn your board every so often so you can get some out the other side. So your Payne's gray isn't all going off to the right of every flower. Okay, so I'm just kissing that little dollop of gray and then rolling my brush out, just like that. And go this way. Okay, so you're not dragging the Payne's gray out, you're just kind of coaxing it a bit when you roll your brush like that. Roll. So just kiss it and roll. One last guy down here. Kiss it and roll down. Roll up. And I'm using Payne's gray because I don't want a really stark black. Okay, this should dry a little lighter. I want it fairly subtle. I think I'm going to try to get a little bit more out of this guy here. Here we go. So we'll just do the last few flowers on this side. One, two, three. I'm pushing it by doing 5, so I've got to go quick before it sinks into the paper and dries on me. But see, it's just nice and subtle, not too deliberate. And like I say, remember to roll your paper. Remember to turn your paper so you get this effect on different sides of the petals. Whoops. Just roll it out. Okay, so I'm just touching that blob of gray and then rolling my brush out. And if your little blob's dry, you can always just go in and put a little bit more gray on there. But go subtle at first, because it's easier to add it in than it is to remove it. See, that one's gone a little dry, so I'm just going to tap a little bit in. Like so. Now it's kind of bleeding more than I would like. But you know what? I'm going to let it do what it wants to do. I don't want to force it. This is all about just real simple, real loose flowers like so. If some of your edges are hard and you're not thrilled with that, you can always go in and smooth those out. I want to stop this bleed over here, so I'm just going to tap it with my paper towel and just blend that out so it's not so. Okay, like that. Now we're going to do the same thing to the pinkish kind of flowers. Straight Payne's gray. I'm going to start up here so my hand's not smearing the rest of the flowers. So rinse off your brush. That was way too heavy, so I'm going to mop some of that up. Just kiss it and roll your brush down. I'm going to bring out a little bit on this side too for this one. So there we have those ones done. And now we're going to go and put some stems in on these guys. And for the stems, I'm going to use this number 2 brush, but I'm going to add a little black to this Payne's gray because I want the stems a little darker. And we're just going to start painting in stems on each of these flowers. Again, I have to watch that I don't hit that with my hand. And I don't know how steady my hand is today, so we'll cross our fingers that I can get nice thin stems. I'm just going to cover that so I don't muck it up with my hand. And if you have to turn your board to do your stems, that's perfectly okay. I do that too, because I just find sometimes I'm steadier if I go from the top of the flower or go from the flower head down. So, and just kind of imagine where the stems are coming out of. It'd be coming out of the center, which would be here, and then coming out. Okay, so I'm just going to curve this, and I'm not doing perfectly straight stems. I want them to curve. And if you need to switch to a liner brush so you get a nice thin line, by all means do that. Some days my hands are steadier than others. So the stems aren't that difficult to paint, and other days they're really hard to paint. Like today, I seem to be struggling a bit. Just going to have this one curved down. So you see I've got it coming from back behind that flower, and then I'm just following the curve all the way down. Okay, don't just do straight up and down stems. This guy will have it coming out from the back and coming down here. And then curving back in. So that's it for that guy. Now these ones, I want to make them look like they're coming all kind of from this direction. So they're all going to curve down this way. Oops, I got gray instead of black. Okay, so we'll start with these guys down here. Just come out like this. And this one would come out like this. And this guy, put a little bit in there. See, my hand's not very steady today. I'm getting thick stems, but that's okay. Sometimes I find if you go faster, you get a thinner stem. Other times I find I really have to hold my brush tight to get some real control. So we have one last flower. That one I'm going to have come down about here. That was a little thick. Just like that. And there you go. There are your two super simple watercolor florals. You can enhance this by adding more splatters if you want. I'm just going to leave it because I may turn this one into a card. But it's that easy. Like I said, these are probably the easiest flowers you'll ever paint. And I think they're kind of pretty. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. And I really hope you'll give it a try. They're really fun to do. Super, super simple. And as always, if you do give these a try and you're on Instagram, don't forget to share your work and tag me so I can have a look. That's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.